got red blinking lights on your end there, dude?
Blinking.
All right, I'm wearing my defund the IRS t-shirt.
Huh,
So there
excellent.
you go.
Excellent. You must have just paid your taxes.
Just exactly. Oh man, I feel like I pay enough of them taxes. Hey man, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's
Good.
I guess we're on a Friday morning record this morning.
Yeah.
This week. So
Yeah, we're off kilter here with our our usual timing.
That's right.
Had a little scheduling snafu yesterday, so it just kind of didn't really work out for me.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you changing your schedule around. Anyway, welcome to the listeners. I should say that first before we get to. We're not going to talk about the weather again. Like last episode, we talked about weather for like an hour.
At least. Yeah.
At least. It was at least 59 minutes. No, we're going to welcome everybody to the Make Trades Great Again podcast. He is Andy. I am Eric. And we are looking at each other on our computer screens. But if you want to join us, one day we'll have videos of these podcasts up. I swear. We do record them and we do edit them. We just have to have a place to put them. Andy, I've got something I wanted to bring up because it's kind of related to something we talked about recently. When we had Chad on, we talked about legislation in Texas. Remember that about the water breaks and stuff?
Yep.
I titled that podcast, Texas Hates Water.
I saw that. I wonder how many people have looked at that and went, wait, what?
Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to come up with something clever, but I had nothing, so that's what I had.
Yeah, there we got it.
Yeah, but this is legislation that came out of Minnesota in the last couple months. It was back in May, but it's interesting because I remember it hitting the headlines and your regular nightly news kind of broadcasts, and it touches on a lot of things that would affect employers in the state of Minnesota, also employees, obviously. And so this is coming from a website called the Minnesota Reformer. I don't know anything about this website. I don't know whether it's like politically motivated or anything. It covers politics. It covers work and money, civil rights, healthcare, schools, housing, and transportation. Those are at least the tabs on their website. And they claim to be independent, but I don't know anything more about that. I'm just citing them as the source. And you're looking at the same thing I have, right? So you got it on your screen? Okay. For the purpose of the video for the podcast, we're not sharing this or anything. It's just, if you want to look it up, go ahead.
Sure.
I don't think that part's important. So Minnesota recently passed a bunch of laws regarding workers' rights. Basically, it's a labor bill.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that's the headline of this bill is Minnesota employees will be eligible for paid sick and safe days, with full-time workers receiving at least 6 paid days off a year. Employees will accrue 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours they work, up to 48 hours a year. So there's nothing in this that I'm reading about this bill that says anything about like contract workers, but it does basically say if you are employed in the state of Minnesota, you are going to accrue an hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours you work.
Right.
For max of 48 hours a year.
Yeah. Roughly 1 hour a week. That's about what they're accounting it to. And it looks to me like, in my opinion, the reason why they're doing it at 30 hours is because that covers a large number of your part-time employees.
Yeah, because 31 hours is considered full-time employment.
Yeah.
So, and that's basically like based off of, if don't crucify me for this, but I think that's based off of like an average for seasonal. Sure. And so like taking into consideration like construction work where maybe you don't have necessarily the full 40-hour work week in a state like Minnesota or Montana, when we have things like winter and it slows down processes of construction, stuff like that.
Sure.
So yeah, that 31-hour work, full-time employment threshold, work 30, you're going to accrue an hour of paid sick leave. What do you think about that as an employer?
I'm not opposed to it at all.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think that sick pay is a bad thing. I don't. My concern with any accrual based benefit, right? Like
Yeah.
works this many hours and you get this, is who manages it. Um, so what is the cost? Where does it come from? And how do I basically say, okay, we're going to now raise our rates to accommodate this
Well, it's
benefit?
exactly what you're gonna have to do.
That's, I mean, that's how it works. This isn't just free money. The state's not going to, I highly doubt that the state of Minnesota is going to say, hey, workers, we're going to take that 1 hour every 30 hours out of your taxes that you paid in
Oh
income
no,
tax,
no.
and we're gonna put that aside for you. That's not how this is going
Oh,
to
are you
work.
kidding me? Oh
No,
man. Oh, don't, I'm not even gonna get going on that, but I'm
that
just gonna say I'll
that would
stop
be
with this.
beautiful
Yeah,
because
it
I'd
would
be
be.
all in.
Oh, I'm going to tell you what Minnesota is going to do is more likely find some special tax rate in
Yeah,
addition to, based off of these. Like they'll figure out a way to tax the employee, the employer,
yeah,
everything. Minnesota's a
yeah,
worse, man. I'm telling
yeah.
you.
You'll have
So
a
no, that's not going to be
yeah,
any
you'll
kind of
have a sick
benefit.
pay sick
Yeah.
pay tax.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You get special sick pay tax. You're going to pay on top of your regular payroll. Oh my
We're
God.
being a
No.
little cynical about this, but
Yeah.
I
No,
guess
it
that
ain't going to happen.
those are things that you know coming from having a little bit of background of being on a negotiating committee where we've talked about sick pay in the past.
Yeah.
That's been one of the topics that's come up, and it's always comes back to who's going to manage it, right? Because as soon as you have something like this, that where you could be like, well, I actually worked, 31 hours, and I only got, whatever the
Yeah.
argument
I know
may
what you mean.
be,
Yeah.
is, next thing you know, you're going to have some sort of competing um, logbook, if you will, or something. It just, there's some of those things I just go, okay, how do we do this so that I don't have an entire another spreadsheet to keep track of about who worked when and how many hours and how many weeks, and oh, did they
Well,
use those 2 hours? I don't know. Does that even qualify for that? I mean, there's that whole level of it, and maybe they've got it figured out. And I don't want to
no, they
sound like
don't.
I'm like negative against it, because I'm not, but I also look at it and say, as a 27-year veteran of being in the workforce, um I've never had sick pay. Not one single day in my entire life have I
Yeah.
ever had sick pay. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't have maybe used it, because I look at some people and go, "Oh, you took a sick day, or you took a couple of days and added onto your vacation with using up some sick pay, huh? Or some paid vacation, some PTO." And I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of an interesting concept, because I don't have that." So it's easy for me to say, "Well, why do you need it?" Because I don't have it.
Yeah,
If I don't
I was
have it,
hoping
you
you
don't
weren't
need
going
it.
down that route. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, well, wait a minute. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd take sick pay if it was offered to me.
Right.
I too have not had it. The the reality is it's been part of the
It,
workforce for many
it,
people,
yeah.
negotiated or not. So there are some stipulations, but let me get back to, like, you were talking
Yeah.
about management.
Yeah.
Here's the truth about it is, it doesn't really matter what we think at this point, right? So, like, you're
Right.
an employer in Minnesota. Um, w- any employer would have had the opportunity to vote against this, as far as, talking to their legislature and stuff, representatives, things like that. But
Yeah.
okay, so it's passed. The point, or the reality is, this is your HR department. Your person in charge of that within your company is already in charge of things like tracking time off and stuff like that. So this is just more work for the employer. And
Yeah.
that's what you're getting at. I get that.
Yeah.
But I mean, just to put a label on it, it's HR.
It is.
That's in that department. And for companies like yours or mine, we don't have that person that's doing that. And
Right.
you're, let's be honest, like, I'm sure forgive me if I'm wrong, because you know more about your business than I do, but I'm sure that you're on the edge of like benefiting from having a full-time person that would take on those types of tasks for your business.
Yeah.
I'm sure that person would have to wear a couple hats,
Right.
right?
Right.
But as you grow, you've got 3 employees now,
Yep.
4 if you include yourself out in the field, right? And
Yep.
then, but you as an owner, it's a little different, right? But
Sure.
you know, you're not going to be talking to the boss about your conditions of employment because you are the boss. But
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
your
I can
workers.
complain all I want about the grueling
Yeah,
hours, and
I know. That's what
just,
I always say too, right?
yeah,
Like bad
one
day at
lump
work.
of
Yeah,
coal.
boss is an a hole. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Um, they, uh, but the reality is it's HR. So like moving on, like there's some details though, as you see it on this screen, it says that employees will be able to make use the time off for a number of reasons, including, and so this maybe isn't, it's just a summation, but to recover from an illness, go to the doctor, care for a sick family member, counseling or other psychological appointment, severe weather caused work or school to close for them or a member of their family.
Yeah. So if the kids are at a school snow day or something
Oh,
like
I
that,
gotcha. So you could get
you could
paid time off.
you could utilize sick time for that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I gotcha. So not necessarily getting paid because there was a storm, but if you had to take the time
Yeah.
off and you don't have childcare or something, I get it. Okay. Seek services for domestic abuse, sexual assault, or stalking. So
I
those are some compelling reasons, I guess. I mean, like I get that. Here's the deal for a lot of people, people in the trades. I don't care where you're at in your career. Healthcare, or I mean, well, healthcare for sure is an issue, but like childcare and like whether you're a it's what's the term, like divorced family, you're
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
co-parenting or you're
Yeah.
both in the house, whatever it is your situation, but like kid stays home from school because it snowed
Right.
and
Yeah. Mom and
that
dad
can be
still have to go to work.
that can be
Yeah.
really hard on
Yeah.
a lot of people. So okay, I'm kind of coming around a little bit. I first read this and I'm like, I don't know why this should be like a mandated law because I think about things like unions that have, like, you have a work agreement.
Right.
Okay. You guys call it a contract. I was
Yep.
in the union years ago. I know all about this. Like, I've
Yeah.
experienced it for over a dozen years. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. I don't currently have that, but I also don't see it as a bad thing. But I also would anticipate that the unions in Minnesota are going to have to, and by law, look at their contracts and amend them
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
meet these guidelines.
Yeah. I think I think you're right. I mean, I just kind of think about it, from our our CBA and how it's structured. If Montana were to take this same approach, which in its current political stance wouldn't ever, um,
Not well,
it's
Minnesota's
not.
a little purple, but a little
Yeah.
more on the blue hue. That's for
Right.
sure.
No, we're definitely a lot darker color than that. And like I say, I don't mean to turn this political, but
No,
I do think that,
it's a huge part of it. It
yeah,
is.
I think that in order for something like this to happen, I mean, you do have, there's a lot of legwork in this. I mean, for a bill like this to pass, they've got to look at it and say, hey, is it even legal? Right. So
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be
the
challenged in
yeah,
Minnesota too.
legislature is going to push this thing through, and it's going to go through the House, and then it's going to go over to the Senate, and they're going to yammer and yammer about it, and it'll probably get something added to it, and then the whole thing will die, because that's the way these work. And if it doesn't, at that point, then it's got to go back, through legal counsel again, and find out, like, I mean, who can sue us over this?
Right.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's so weird. I didn't realize that some of this stuff goes that way, is so far that way. Um, I kind of sat on a panel here a few years ago about the Uniform Plumbing Code adoption in the state of Montana.
Oh my God.
and the Montana amendments, so it was this
Yep.
thing that everybody was like, oh, we're going to get rid of the uniform plumbing code. So I got involved, I'm like, this is stupid. We can't do this. And I sat on this, not on let's say on the panel, I observed from a public comment section,
Yeah.
and somebody had asked a question about, well, I don't even know why we need this. Why do we need this review session? And, it kind of went on. And then one of the attorneys spoke up and said, well, listen, here's how this works is that the state of Montana through legislation has adopted this code. And also in that same legislation, we've decided that we want to amend it to fit our weather patterns, our climate,
Yeah.
things that we want to see. Yeah. There's all
Same
kinds
thing
of
in Minnesota, other states do
every
it.
state.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he goes on to say in the argument that was up in place, I think at the time was, I think the rest of the country was on the 2015 or the 2018 plumbing code,
Sure.
and we were still using the 2009.
12 or something. Yeah.
Right. We were like 5 years back.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
was like, why have you not adopted this? Like, what is the holdup here? And the attorney basically said, we can't. We'll be sued.
Right.
Like we can't come in and say that we want to change these things because someone will sue us, and then it'll hold the whole thing up, and then it's just going to cost everybody millions of dollars to get out of it.
Yep.
And so we're at this conundrum where we've got to figure out how to go past this point, and then we can adopt the new code. And it was just kind of like, what the heck? The state's going to get sued over adopting a code? And I look at this and go, well, yeah, I bet there's somebody that's going to get involved with this and say, no, you can't make me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not saying that because I disagree with it, or I'm going to be the first one on the list of class action lawsuit. Because I don't. I definitely think that the list of things that they've got there are viable. I mean, they wouldn't be on there. I look at things and go, to go to counseling or another psychological appointment, and I go, well, interesting. What? I mean, that's like in my mind one of the top. I don't know. One of the most unrecognized issues that our nation faces is mental illness. Yeah. And so I look at that and go, well, you know what? That's probably a pretty good legitimate reason for somebody to say, hey, I need a couple hours.
Yeah.
And not have to say, hey, I need a couple hours to go see the shrink,
or not.
It's just, I need a couple hours. I got this on the schedule. I'm going to use a couple of my sick hours,
well,
whatever.
It should hopefully benefit the people who are being forced to forego those appointments and that kind of treatment that they need.
Yeah.
Because it's probably for the first time going to make that money available, that time, that,
right.
opportunity to see that doctor. So a lot of good could definitely come from that. Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to look at this, or if they're even listening by now, I hope you are. I think some people are going to look at this and write it off immediately as, well, this is just people taking advantage of the system.
Right.
I'm going to say a couple things about that.
Yeah.
First, you probably not expect this, but absolutely, that's 100% right. It's going to happen. But guess what? It's already happening. It's gonna. It was gonna happen regardless of your politics or what you think of other people.
Right.
That is not going to change. But then there, on the other side of that argument, is like you just brought up. People need to go to the doctor. People need this psychiatric care, or and so maybe for the people who aren't trying to take advantage of it the way how people are going to say they would.
Right.
Maybe this is actually going to enrich their lives and make things better for everybody.
Sure.
Just an idea. It's not always, you don't have to look at this completely negatively, right?
No.
And maybe some people aren't even thinking that way. I don't want to put that thought in your head, but
no. I go back to if there's a management component of it that is going to go back to the employer, for the employer to manage. I look at all of the 2, 3, 4 under 10-man shops, 10 employee shops,
Yeah.
contracting businesses,
It's going to make it
whatever,
pretty hard.
that are going to look at this and go, we're not doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I'm just going to write this off, and then you got all the headache that comes along with it. Um, so it'll be interesting to see where this goes for sure. Um, I like I said, it's come up in negotiations in the past, and the stance from from the employment side has always been, like, how do we benefit from this? I mean, and I don't say that from like, I need to make my money. I'm going to be, Scrooge McDuck and,
Yeah. They're not.
whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a give take, I mean, you try to operate in a balance where, profit's a thing. And when you continually add benefits that have a cost to it, somewhere the cost has to be made up. And, the old argument of, well, we're just going to pay the McDonald's employees $15 an hour and the Big Mac's going to stay $2.50. Well, it doesn't work. It can't work that way.
No,
I mean,
it hasn't. Yeah.
is there a level of profit that is in the company that they could maybe afford to pay their employees better? Yeah, sure. I don't know. I don't know what McDonald's, profit and loss statement looks like, and nor is it any of my business. However,
Well, sure it is. It's a public company. You can look at it.
Right.
I know what you're saying.
But you know what I'm saying. There is,
yeah, absolutely.
Some of that. I look at some industries and go, well, let's say that you're mom and pop's lawn care business, and you're
this is
charging
going to cost that
$28.
company. This is going to cost
$28 a lawn a week, and you got 8 guys that are out, running a push mower for basically minimum wage.
Well, you could look at it a couple different ways. So, it could be a blessing for some people based off of who they have working for them, because it might give them now a defined structure that they maybe didn't have.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So, like, this is what the law states, and this is all we're going to offer you.
This is all I can offer. Yeah.
Right. But then you have people that have companies that have, and most do. I know your contract and all that kind of stuff sets you apart from a lot of private like non-union setups, but like just employee vacation. So like this is not vacation time. This is, but it's structured kind of like that, right? So like
it is.
Most companies would have some kind of policy in place saying, hey, you have to work here for a year before we give you, 3 days vacation. Then you work here for like 3 years, then we'll, or 2 years, then we'll give you a week, and then you work here for 4 years and we give you 2 weeks. So something like that, right? Like, obviously it sounds familiar. It exists. But this is not vacation time. So like an employer who's going to look at this and be like, you know what, screw it. The state says I have to do this. I don't have to give my employees vacation. Like, it's no law that says I have to do that. It's just, I'm doing that to be competitive, try to have a good workplace. Right.
Yeah.
So that's where this comes in, where I think proponents of this are going to be like, you know what, you need to have people who are happy working for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So judge that happiness and that good, morale versus your profit. And how does this benefit like the company overall? I don't know how much. I'm not an expert by any means on how much it benefits your company monetary, on the money side of things by having happy employees. I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
I'm sure it does. Absolutely. But, either way, it's a law now in Minnesota.
Yep.
And I mean, we don't know every letter of this law. Andy and I did not read this bill. We basically got the headlines, but we got it from what seems to be a reputable source here. And it's interesting. There's more to it. We should cover in another episode. I think it's worth talking about these topics because it's something that maybe doesn't directly immediately affect everybody that listens here. But we do have a lot of people that download the podcast in Minneapolis. Isn't that something? Like a lot of people.
Funny.
So I think we should wrap this up. But unless you got more to add.
No, I was just kind of digging through the rest of this, and there's some things in here that I mean, there's some of it that I feel like is, hey, this is great. And I think some of the other things I look at and go, this seems a little pointed. um, and may cause it some trouble. And this is what we were talking about with Chad the other, a week ago or whatever.
Yeah.
Was is so many of these bills. I mean, and on a federal level, on a state level, people spend hundreds of thousands of hours and dollars, millions of dollars, trying to build something to benefit the people, right?
Yep.
We're gonna build the new Golden Road, and it's gonna be awesome. And everybody's on board, like, oh yeah, that would be super cool. And then they stick something in the back end of it, or a whole bunch of somethings in the back end of it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's not so shiny anymore.
Yeah.
Now we just have another dirt road, because all of this stuff that's attached to it. And I look at some of the things that are put on the back end of this little bit of legislation and go, okay, well, you kind of lost it there. But
Well, I think I know what you're talking about. There's a thing about that on this legislation, the bill that passes says captive audience meetings will be banned. And we got to wrap this up, but this is another subject altogether. But real quick, just a preview maybe of an upcoming episode.
Yeah.
Employers won't be allowed to require workers to attend anti-union presentations or other meetings to hear about the employer's religious or political views.
Right.
The so-called captive audience meetings are often the primary way employers discourage their employees from unionizing and can be highly effective. So I'm just going to stop it there. There's more to it, but
yeah. That's a law already.
So. That is a law. However, it's not banned, it's not being enforced. It's not literally not since like 1945.
Right. Okay.
So it's interesting, but no, it is interesting topic. I think, I hope you guys find interest in what we talk about here on the Make Trades Great Again podcast. Andy, you have anything else to add before we sign her off?
I don't, other than if you do have something that sparks your interest or something, you go, I don't know anything about that, or I'd like to hear these guys' take on that, or God forbid you wanted to hear Chad's take on it. I guess let us know.
Are you inviting people to ask for Chad to come on the podcast?
I don't know.
What's wrong with you?
I don't know. Anyway, you can get me at Mick_Plum on Instagram. You can get Eric at Mechanical Hub at Instagram. You could get us on email at maketradesgreatagain@gmail.com. And feel free to email us, send us a message in the DMs, and just make sure you put the big fat MTGA at the beginning so that we know that you're a legit listener and not somebody trying to sell us something.
Yeah, I legit. I'm using that word because you just did.
Yeah.
I actually type in my search bar on my DMs MTGA, and then I see what people sent in.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way I'm going to see your comment. I promise.
Yep.
And I'm looking for it actively.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm running out of ideas, things to talk about.
we keep coming up with good ones.
I don't know. Yeah, somehow. Thank God this legislation passed. Give us something to talk about. Maybe a couple episodes.
There you go.
All right, dude. Have a good one.
All right, you too.